So question 2, the impact on the planning, looking for risks and then responding to those risks. So guys, if you didn't know what to do, this is the point that you would open ISA 300, your planning of an audit standard, and it breaks it up for you into what needs to happen. An audit strategy and an audit plan need to be developed. And then there's no guidance on the strategy. But as you look into what needs to happen in the strategy, you need to pick up the risks. You need to ensure that appropriate resources have been assigned to this engagement. How do you do that? Find out what all the risks are and then look at the responses at a financial statement level and at an assertion level. That's when I start to look at the resources to apply. So my ISA 330, which has the audit plan. Okay, so I'm going to start with going into ISA 315 just so that you guys can see where you can find the risks if you need guidance on picking up risks, and then quickly into 330 just to look at that overall response for now, because detailed audit procedures were not required. You come into ISA 315, identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatement. You'll go down to the requirements, to your specific paragraphs, 28 to 37. You also know that there are application paragraphs applicable for those requirements, and then Appendix 2, understanding inherent risk factors, is where you're going to find everything. But if you didn't pick up Appendix 2, you would go to your identifying risk paragraphs first and then see how they make reference to Appendix 2. So let's go to 28. We come to identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatements, and we've already got 2 application paragraphs we need to look at. We then see 28 says we have to identify the risks at 2 levels, the financial statement level and the assertion level. Then you need to determine the relevant assertions and the significant classes of transactions. So we're going to have to look at that. Start with your A184 to A192. So identifying and assessing the risks of material misstatement. Why do we do that? So we can determine the nature, timing, extent of the further audit procedures. And when we identify the risks, we first look at inherent risk. The assertions are then listed, so this is why you've got to go to the first application paragraphs, which describe the identifying and assessing the risks, because this is what you need to know. These are the assertions for your class of transactions. These are the assertions for your account balances, so that you've already got a guidance as to what the assertions stand for, so that when you find a risk, you can go and link it to the correct assertion. In assessing the risks at the financial statement level, you've got to do additional work. So we're going to 193 to A200. And it tells us what we're looking for. They're risks that are pervasive to the financials. They could affect many assertions. And it explains you are looking for circumstances that pervasively increase the risk material misstatements at the assertion level. There is an example. They're facing operating losses and liquidity issues. So now I know, did I make any notes that there could be risks with regards to the going concern? Because then those are going to become applicable. It also says, if you find any concerns with the control environment, their risk assessment process, their monitoring of the system of internal control, those are going to influence the risks at the financial statement level. They give you another example. If they are using the financials to secure finance, I know they are, that was specifically included in the scenario, if it's applicable. So I now No, that is going to be a risk at the financial statement level. Okay, so concerns with the control environment. Then again, any concerns about the integrity of management. So, were there concerns with management integrity? Because I know I need to include those risks at a financial statement level. Also, were there concerns with the information system and changes in the IT environment? Because those affect the risk at a financial statement level, so I can now go and include those. Assessing the risks at the assertion level, we've got to identify the risks and then assess the inherent risk by assessing the likelihood and magnitude. So we've got to look at the degree in which the inherent risk factors affect the susceptibility of the relevant assertion to misstatements, and we have to consider if there's risks at a financial statement level that could affect the assertion. Okay, so that's really important. We then need to consider if there's a significant risk and if there are any areas where substantive procedures alone cannot provide sufficient evidence. I'm not going to worry about that for now. And then if we plan on testing controls, we have to assess control risk. So let's go back up and start with the first application paragraphs. And here we go. Risks of material misstatements at the assertion level. Appendix 2 sets out examples. So guys, you can't find anything in the scenario, even having looked at the assertions to see how they explain how it's not misstated, then you would go to Appendix 2. But before we get there, let's look at this. We've got to see that the risk does not pervasively affect the financial statements, so it is a risk at the assertion level. You've got to determine the relevant assertions from understanding the information. There's some examples of disclosures that may be significant here. And then we've got to assess the risk, the likelihood and the magnitude, guys, because this is going to determine if it's a high inherent risk or a low to medium inherent risk. Okay, and that will affect how we perform or respond to those risks. And then we have to look if there are any risks that pervasively affect that assertion. So guys, once I've assessed the information applicable to that account balance or class of transaction and found all the risks there, and I still need more, then this paragraph tells me I need to go and see if there are any risks at a financial statement level that I can then go and bring down to the applicable assertion. So I'm not just going to look at the information specific to that account balance or class of transaction. I'm going to consider risks at a financial statement level too. Okay, I'm going to see if there's any significant risks that require more attention, because there's a whole bunch of responses that we need to look at. And then, guys, we've got to consider if there are any controls, because that means we can consider whether there's a risk that the control is not working in determining our risk assessment. Okay, so let's quickly go and have a look at Appendix 2, and it explains the complexities around the recording of something so that there could be a risk at the financial statement level or assertion level, and then you've got your examples. And there you can see anything with regards to regulatory requirements or concerns with applicable financial reporting framework, or where there's subjectivity, but that could be more applicable to an assertion level. Economic conditions, if it's unstable, that's a risk at the financial statement level. Your market, any going concern issues, we had some. Entity structures, changes, that's going to be a concern at a financial statement level. Changes in an IT environment. New legislation, reporting requirements, pending litigations. And then a few specific risks at the financial statement level. Lack of personnel with the right knowledge, control deficiencies or past misstatements. So once again, I'm looking for any examples of these in the scenario because those are risks that need to be addressed. And then I have to come up with a response to those risks. ISA 330 has those responses, and there, requirements, your overall responses, and then audit procedures responsive to the assessed risks at an assertion level. They've said don't go into the audit procedures, so all I'm going to do is go to the overall responses in an application paragraph because that's where my answer is. So A1. And A1 says the overall responses, you need to emphasize to the audit team to maintain professional skepticism, assign more experienced staff or experts, provide more supervision, incorporate the elements of unpredictability, and then make general changes to the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. So because they've said don't give detailed, give those general, performing substantive procedures at period end instead of at an interim date, and maybe modifying those to obtain more pervasive, so maybe doing more. That's where I would leave my responses. So let's go into the scenario to find the risks and then simply put down these responses. So guys, I'm looking for anywhere I have noted a risk, and I'm going to start in the order of the scenario. So as I see, I've put down a risk, whether it be at the assertion level, at the financial statement level, for the company, for the group, I'm going to put it down because I've already spent my time in the reading time to pick these up. So I want to put these down first instead of trying to find more. Use what I've picked up already. So the first thing I've got here is there's rapid growth. That's a risk at the financial statement level for the company itself. So I'm going to put it down. So I'm doing question 2. And guys, I'm going to set it out the way I had picked up or noted in my analysis, where I'm going to say these are the risks, and then I'm going to have a response. I want to make it clear between the company and the group. So I'm going to say, yeah, company. And when I do then pick up group things, I'm going to have a heading for group. Alright, so I'm going to say, there's a risk that the controls or the control environment is not growing at the speed of the rapid growth of the entity or the company, and therefore there could be material misstatements. And therefore material misstatements may arise. You can structure it however you want, but you want to make a note there that there is a risk of material misstatement because of this factor that I've picked up from the scenario. And because I've now picked up a risk at the financial statement level, I can now go and put all the responses that came out of ISA 330. So I'm going to put them all down, even though I've only picked up the one risk. Because it's at the financial statement level, all those responses become relevant now. So I can say, emphasize to the engagement team to maintain professional skepticism. I can say assign more experienced staff. I can say increase supervision. incorporate unpredictability. In the selection of further audit procedures, got to make general changes to the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. For example, and I must give these because I'm not allowed to give detailed audit procedures, but I can give examples of potential changes to each of the elements of the audit plan. So I can say do more substantive testing in terms of my nature. I can test closer to year end. I can increase sample sizes. And I know that if I'm saying let's increase sample sizes, what works with that is to decrease materiality. So those are just some general changes I can do to respond to a specific risk at the financial statement level, and now any other risks that I pick up at the financial statement level. So let's go back to pick up more risks. So I can cross that off. The next risk here, they are listed. There's always at least two risks when a company is listed, so I'll put them both down. The first risk is the risk that the financial statements are fraudulently misstated to appear to meet the listing requirements. They aren't meeting the listing requirements, but they misstate the financials to look like they are meeting the listing requirements so that they can continue to be listed. And then there's the risk that if they don't meet them, they could face penalties, which if so severe could result in them no longer being a concern, or if they don't meet them, they could be delisted, which could affect their ability to continue. So whenever there's a regulation they have to adhere to, there will always be a going concern risk if they do not comply with that regulation, because there could be penalties or fines for not complying. And then what happens if those penalties or fines are so significant they can't continue if they need to settle them? Okay, so there's a risk that entity does not meet the listing requirements, resulting in penalties or delisting, affecting the ability to continue as a going concern. And then what's the problem with the financials? If the financials are still prepared on a going concern basis, they are misstated. They should be then prepared on an alternative basis. You can cross that off.